Welcome to Along the Towpath. Today I'm joined by the brilliant Simon Leadbetter from We Are Unchained. Now Simon gives us some fantastic insights and I'm really looking forward to sharing them with you, so enjoy the next 40 minutes or so. So Simon, welcome to the towpath.
I love a good towpath.
You do. You were saying that you do this a lot,
Yeah.
but just not with a couple of cameras and
No,
people
this
behind.
is unusual for me. This is unusual for me. But no, we live near the Grand Union Canal,
Okay.
which actually you can join this canal if you go up through Birmingham and come back down
I'm
again.
going to have to take your word for
Yeah,
that because
so
we don't go that far.
But they're not a direct
and I
connection.
think it's that way actually, rather than this way.
Probably. Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
downhill, aren't we?
Yeah,
So that's obviously the southeast.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yes. So welcome, and
pleasure to be
thank
here.
you for taking the long journey to come and see us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So for those the few people that don't know you, tell us what's your name, where do you come from, who are you, where are you from, and tell us why you what you've been doing, and give us the lowdown.
Yeah, sure. So Simon Leadbetter. I have a name for marketing, Leadbetter, and actually it's genuine. It's not a deed poll change. That's actually my name.
Oh, good, well done. Coincidence.
Last couple of years, I've been running a business called We Are Unchained.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, going to kind of release people from bad marketing. I'm essentially
Is that a strapline?
basically yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that, yeah.
I'm basically unemployable, which is why I need to run my own business.
Yeah.
And I've run several over the years, but I kind of stepped into property about 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with property. Just fell in love with property. Various companies, we'll talk about those later, but I realised back in 2021 after lockdown I really need to be my own boss. That's kind of the way I'm made.
Okay, interesting.
I need to be a master of my own fate. Mm-hmm. So started We Are Unchained, built it around my vision of what marketing could be, and we've had 2 really good years of working with amazing companies, helping them do their marketing better, but I do it for smaller independent businesses because I've always worked for big companies apart from my own businesses, and I don't really want to help the big companies.
They don't need the help, do they? Frank?
They do.
One would argue they might do.
They do, but quite frankly, I'd rather help the smaller, the independents, the self-employeds, because that's where real entrepreneurship
you're
and really
giving
interesting stuff's happening.
smaller businesses the opportunity to tap into your extensive experience for those big companies to enable them to compete
Yeah.
with that level of information.
So
and
I've
knowledge.
had really big budgets, really big teams. I've learnt what works, what doesn't, and I work on a fractional basis. So I take my time, I divide it up, and that lets me work with lots of really interesting entrepreneurs and business owners and smaller independent businesses. And I am interested in lots of different things at once. My profile is.
Okay.
So working on one client
You can become a bit
isn't
stale, a
kind
bit
of
dull
the
for
thing
you.
that I want. No, yeah, and I'm a real change agent.
Okay.
So I like to fix problems, go into a business, sort out their problems, put a status quo team in,
Interesting.
and let them then run the kind of the keep things as they are. But my desire is always to change, and companies are always changing all the time. That can be exhausting for
Not
them.
great. Yeah,
No,
yeah. So straight lines and all that. Yeah. Okay. So how you've been? When did you start up We Are Unchained?
So we started in 2022.
Yep.
Real soft start because I was trying to work out what I wanted to do for about 6 months. And then really around April 2023, I really found the path I wanted to go on.
Yep.
Which is this kind of fractional marketing support for businesses,
Interesting.
producing tons of insight.
Yep.
And because you've been on the course,
Yep.
doing lots of training for agents. So for those who couldn't pay my day rate, being honest, they could do it themselves.
That's interesting because we've been on the 30 years of marketing in one day, which, without it being a pitch on your behalf, it is singularly one of the best, probably the best training course I've ever been on, because it is so very intense. We were talking about it this morning. It is a prompt 8:30 start, and it is a God. We're already at 5:30 already. How the hell is that happening?
My delegates often look broken by the end of it, but
And it's fantastic because you do really just impart all that knowledge, and it's beautifully presented, and it is a fantastic day. And for those that haven't been on it, strongly suggest you do get in touch with Simon and work out when his next event is, because it's just pure gold.
Well, what it comes from is, because I used to run large marketing departments, I suddenly realised, it's got a real revelation to me, is most marketers don't understand marketing at an epic level. And they'd be very bright, very enthusiastic, but they wouldn't understand the principles of marketing.
And there's also an irony that everybody thinks they can do marketing.
Everyone's a marketer. Yeah. Everyone's a marketer.
Well, we all know we've got access to Canva and social media. we know how to do it, don't we? Yeah.
So I basically ran this course internally in companies. Now, the big companies that were paying me big figures to run the marketing, I thought, you know what? One of my duties as a manager, as a leader, is to train my team how to do marketing. So that's what I did. I started this course, built it up over time. When I became independent, that allowed me to basically go and say, right, I can share this data with everyone.
I think that's great, isn't it? Because it's not quite philanthropic, but it is, because you're still a commercial entity.
Yeah.
But what you're able to do is actually pivot all the huge amount of knowledge that you've got into a new audience, which now we do have access to Canva, social media, and all these channels where we can go and do exciting things ourselves. It gives people not just the freedom to do it, but it definitely gives people a toolkit, and the sort of the cursory or basic knowledge, with a very large element of depth involved, in terms of what not to do. And I think we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, I think the world today can make you a very busy fool. You can suddenly start doing lots and lots of stuff without really understanding why you should do it. And the principles of marketing are the principles of marketing. They don't really change regardless of new channels, new opportunities to do things, to do it yourself or to get a professional to do it, whatever you want to do. But you should at least understand why you're doing it.
Yes.
And actually, just because you've always done it, or just because your manager's told you to do it, doesn't mean it's necessarily the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
So understanding the principles of marketing means you go through a process that goes with, I know what questions to ask and how to ask them to get the answers, rather than just going, I need to do more social media, which is a default, or I need to do some pretty pictures. Think about what you need to do and why you need to do it. And that's kind of what I'm teaching, is there's a process, and we'll talk about the process later, but there's a real simple process that people can follow that will allow them to get the right answers from their marketing and just do better marketing.
So how many people have you had on the course so far?
Went out to 250.
Goodness me, as many as that.
We had someone come from Sydney.
Really? Wow.
And we had someone come from, for the last one we did in Reading, came from Boston, the United States.
Goodness me. That just says a lot, doesn't it?
And the nice thing is, both of them said, and that was, again, I find the feedback always very humbling, is they both said, and they're both really serious marketers, went, that's the best marketing course I've ever been on. And I know it doing it is, you forget more than you remember.
Yes.
And even for me, it's a reminder doing it.
It's like a check-in.
It's a check-in. You sort of go, oh yeah, there's that theory that I know about, but I've never used.
Your workbook is actually by my desk constantly as a reference, which is great, because the three of us as business owners have been on it. It was really important. Stu and I went first, and George, when he later sort of was able to be a bit more free, joined you in Bristol. I think
it was one of our liveliest events.
Was it?
Yes, it was one of our liveliest.
He was there, probably.
Yes, you might have been surprised by how lively it was. It was a very noisy crowd. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the value we got out of it was fantastic, but it certainly helped us in terms of steering our direction. We were brand new. I mean, when Stu and I went down to see Milton Keynes' direction, I think it was.
Yeah.
We'd not even started the business.
That's November 2023.
That's right.
So really early on for you guys.
Yeah.
I love it when people come at that stage in their business. I told you, I love it when people come. And it's amazing the amount of people who think they don't need to come.
Yes.
And even the most experienced marketer will tell me, yeah, I
those who
really learned a lot there.
Yeah, those who think they don't need to come are usually not the right people anyway, are they? So, it's, they're not going to learn anything. They're just
I know what to do, young man,
as
I've heard
on the social. Yeah. Or what is it somebody referred to the other day as the TikTok? Yeah. So,
I know. And I think everyone thinks they're a marketer, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
And not everyone thinks they're an accountant, but everyone needs to do accounts.
Yes.
I'm not a salesman or salesperson. I as my wife will often moan at me, is I'm terrible at closing a deal. I just love the chat and exploring the strategy and the marketing stuff. Closing the deal is not my skill set. And I don't expect to be a great salesperson. I know how to find a good salesperson and then help them to help me. Not everyone can be a great marketer.
No, quite. There's a misnomer, isn't there? A lot of people think that sales and marketing are the same thing, which they are They couldn't be more different, really, and especially in terms of skill set.
It's one of my biggest bugbears,
Yeah.
sales and marketing. Marketing, then sales. Marketing is the top of your funnel. It's about making everyone know you exist.
It's what provides the opportunity.
Sales is the final mile. You need both. You 100% need both, and I value both. But it's not sales and marketing. It's marketing, then sales.
Yes.
If you're doing your marketing right, your sales gets easier.
So let's explore that a bit further then, shall we? So one of the things that you've been parading around brilliantly and beautifully is your Voice of the Agent survey,
Yeah.
which is I think, was it, how many, the second one?
This is the third.
Third
year.
one.
Third year.
Goodness me. And they have, just describe that to us.
So, all good marketing starts with really understanding your market. What we call insight. It's getting all the data, all the research to understand who you're talking to. So when I kind of started out on my own, I had a view of how the world worked. I'd worked in corporate agency, I'd worked in independence through Fine & Country, which is a gathering of independent agents coming together. I worked for self-employed at Keller Williams, and I'd worked with kind of like the prime end with Knight Frank, so I kind of knew the parts of it. But that gave me a very specific view of the market. Broad one, but still quite specific.
Yeah.
So I did the Voice of the Agent to understand my audience. And when I got the research back, I thought, why don't we just give this to everybody? Because this is useful to everybody in the industry. To be selfish, it raises my profile.
Hosting the party. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the one who's got the insight. Oh.
Yep.
I love children, pets, and cyclists.
Exactly.
Right?
Make sure you don't give them a good shove just to...
So I did it essentially to
them a cool
basically
down.
research the market. And I had this data, so I shared it with everyone. People really liked it. So I thought, okay, I'll do it every single year then. And I'd done something similar years ago in financial services, where I launched a business in financial services.
Okay.
Where I interviewed IFAs.
Okay.
So that gave me 7 years of insight on IFAs.
So you knew what you were doing.
And I knew it would work. And over time, it's just grown its own legs, and it's like its own identity. People talk about it. You had Simon Gates on.
Yes.
I think he talks about it as the Bible.
Yeah, yes. Well, it is, isn't it?
And
I mean,
to me,
it's
it just
valuable.
means if you are a local independent agent in Skegness, there's 3 of you, you have a view of what's going on in your market, but you want to see what the best agents are doing, what the real leaders are doing. Not the biggest, but the most...
What good looks like
What
and
good looks,
what
the
success
fast growth
looks like.
ones, exactly. And because we have a question about growth, we can pull out the growth agents and understand them differently from everyone else. So you can benchmark what you're doing against everyone else. And for a lot of people who are like running the marketing, they're not the loudest voice in a business.
Yes.
So they actually have data to back up their argument.
Yeah.
So when they're talking to the very strong individual who runs their business, they go,
They can
look,
prove and demonstrate.
read the report, and you can see why I'm recommending what we're doing. And to me, I think the industry just needs better marketing.
Yeah, well, if you're able to evidence the things you're recommending,
Exactly.
then it becomes irrefutable, doesn't it?
Exactly. And, you know, I say, for selfish reasons, it's great for our reputation. We're seen as a knowledge, thought leader in the industry. For our business, it gives us a level of insight that no one else has, because we have all the data behind it, not just what's published. But for me, in that kind of a sort of philanthropic interest, if you are a small independent and you don't have the huge research resources of a big corporate, read the Voice of the Agent and it'll tell you what good looks like.
Yeah.
And I think we'd all do to help our own colleagues and peers a bit more in our industry.
Well, it raises the bar for everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all boats rising together in the harbour, and to quote maritime.
And we're a
phrasing.
very long tail of small businesses. You know, we're not a very highly concentrated 4 big, it's not like the supermarkets or the banks where there's just big players that have 20% each. Lots of smaller players, and I kind of, because I love the industry, again, sounds a bit wet, but it's genuinely, I just want the people in the industry to have an easier job.
Yeah, and you want to add value to it. don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if that means some of them will call me and want to work with me, excellent.
Yeah, well, yeah, that kind of helps, doesn't it?
We're all capitalists.
Yeah, exactly. So let's sort of drill down that even further then. So Prime Cuts is the talking specifically and selfishly. Let's mind out of the way. Specifically and selfishly. Morning. About that, because we obviously focus on the upper quartile.
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
the people that we talk to and are certainly going to be watching this are focused on the upper quartile, and that you sent over this morning kindly
Yeah.
a lot of stats.
bit late, sorry about that.
No, I read it, but I was like, I'm not going to remember to memorise all that by the time we get down there. So, but I know you will have done.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those let's talk about those numbers, because there were some really interesting numbers in there. In the difference between the core market, as we would call it, and the prime market, or the agents that are approaching and looking at the upper quartile, and their mindset, their vision, and sort of foresight on what's to come. So talk us through the differences there in terms of what that report showed, which was, I suspect, probably a little bit of surprise to everybody.
Yeah, and I think what we saw with the main report, which is everybody, two very different worldviews. One which was a sales one, which was estate agency, positive, optimistic, confident about the future. Lettings, we know with the rental reform bill and what's going on with open rent, actually quite not pessimistic, but realistic to negative perspective of what's going on with the rental market. We didn't see that with the prime space. Prime space is confident on almost every front.
With reason?
I think because the prime space is slightly protected against the vagaries of the whole market. We do have quite a lot of wealthy people in the United Kingdom.
Who are perhaps able to take a longer term view.
Yeah, they are often quite asset rich. We have the baby boomers going through. They often have big equity amounts in their properties. So they're feeling a bit insulated from the remainder of the market, and that's giving them more freedom to do things. So if you're an agent dealing with that part of the market, actually you protected yourself from the totally cyclical nature of the rest of the market. Obviously the difference is you're dealing with fewer properties, so unless you're winning them, 4 properties, 5 properties in a year could be your business. So if you lose 1 or 2 of them, you could lose a quarter to a third of your business.
It's a big impact on you.
It's a very big impact. We had it at Knight Frank, where the prime officers, they would sell very few properties, make an enormous amount of money, and actually that could go up and down quite significantly if they didn't get those listings. But the people within that marketing, as a holistic view, they're protected against the vagaries of our market, the cost of living. I go out for lunch with Russell Quirk on a regular basis to have a chat with him about the market, and we often look around the restaurant we're in and go, did you hear there's a cost of living crisis? I think there is a cost of living crisis. I'm not diminishing it anyway, but it affects the whole of the market, not the prime in the same way. Morning. So I think there is a bit of protection there. So that was the first thing, is actually the optimism in the prime market was really good. So that was quite good. That was quite nice to see.
Because when we look at the IMF forecast from the last couple of weeks, which is that obviously things aren't as rosy in the economy, when this goes out, we'll know the results of what's happening. So it takes a few weeks for the editing and for us to build the pre-launch. So it's not going to be immediately relevant, but it still will be relevant. That's probably an interesting sort of opposing view of what you've presented through your survey. That actually IMF is not looking too rosy as far as they're concerned, but actually the agency thinking, do you know what? We've been through this before. We know we've got the bruises. We know what it feels like. We also know that the peaks and troughs are just as deep, but they're a little bit more spread apart, possibly. Is that what the thought process is?
Yeah, and I think, we're not building enough houses. And there's some real fundamentals here going on with economics. And I know whatever's happening with the broader economy, and obviously things like COVID and the global financial crash did quite dramatic things. In reality, house prices can only go up longer term. Now, obviously, if you have to get a mortgage, what's going on with the broader economy really matters, because interest rates change. If you're in a property outright, you can move if you want to. So I think what we're seeing with the prime market very much is they're more protected. These are cash-rich people, and if you're in the upper quartile space, the people who are moving into it are also people who are seeing their affluence rising significantly as well. So again, the summary, the long and short of it is, the prime market's really good.
We like that.
I just, if the research came back and said, you know what, it's actually really bad, I'd say that. But generally, overall, estate agency is still looking strong as an overall. Letting struggling a bit. but all of prime is looking good.
So, and I think one of the things that I picked up from the sort of very quick read of it this morning was actually the word stood out as it does to all business owners: cash flow, which is, if you're to, well, the Warren Buffett, rule 1, protect cash at any cost. Rule 2, remember rule 1.
The sage of Omaha.
The key fact is that these peaks and troughs, whether they're in seasonality in the market or timescales for legals and all the other sort of things that we have to be very mindful of at the moment, that whilst there may be a slightly lesser market, I had, as you know, David Linley from By Design on the here on the Towpath, and he made a very good, interesting point that the market share for the key agencies, ones that you used to work for at the time, those are now diminishing. That might be because you're not around those.
Of course,
probably. But that's now being spread to, dare I say, the smaller agencies that you are working with. But actually, there is a change in dynamic in the upper quartile, is there not?
It's really interesting, because I did some work about 2.5 years ago on exactly that factor, and I noticed that the leading prime agencies were seeing a declining overall market share. I know Christopher Watkin did some similar, and I know David Linley did something similar. So over a 3 years period, and I've been tracking it myself since as well, there is a declining market share for those established prime brands. And I'm seeing this quite a lot. So I know a good friend of Daniel Dagger's, DDRE. What you're seeing is his phenomenon sort of taking off, is fee earners, the rainmakers, are going, I could do this for myself. And they're sort of going off and doing it for themselves. We're seeing the rise of Fine and Country was a great concept. Fine and Country was I wish I'd had that idea. Malcolm Lindley, genius, was take a bunch of independent businesses and give them a prime brand they can put over the top so they can penetrate the prime market. More and more people, of which Chartwell Noble might be one, has actually gone, that's good for independent business. What about actual individuals? And therefore, can we get really good individuals? They could go out on their own. That's really hard, and I've nothing but respect for people who go out on their own. But to do it under an umbrella of a really well-created brand, and I'm a big fan of what Chartwell Noble's done in terms of its branding, to be under that brand, it gives you a level of protection and credibility with potential clients. So really good people are leaving established brands, striking off directly on their own, or joining other smaller, more entrepreneurial organisations, and that can only harm the existing brands. Still massive fans of the established brands. Knight Frank is an incredible brand.
They still have a place, and lots of have a place. They're not going to disappear.
Of course not.
Out loud, but there's going to have to be more to go around, isn't there?
It's going to be much more spread over a greater number of players.
And I suppose thank you for the kind words, by the way. I appreciate that.
It's genuine.
Thank you. And the marketplace is changing as well, because the old stalwart agents, or even the client base, has now changed, has it not? Because it's an aging population, and obviously people are downsizing, and we've all got experience of people who, my house is a Knight Frank house, my house is a Savills house, my house is a Stratton Parker, Hamptons, insert name of premium branding here. And is that era changing, do we think?
Yes. I came through financial services, and I worked for Barclaycard.
Okay.
And we did a whole bunch of research, because MBNA, Capital One, were entering the UK market in the noughties. And a bit of research, really, the line that really stuck with me is Barclaycard was the credit card your dad had. And what we're seeing across all markets, and really strong research on this, is people are becoming, it's a good word, more promiscuous with their brands.
Prepared to experiment with other brands.
And, in a personal brand, in a more entrepreneurial world with influencers and that kind of thing, these factors are changing. People are more willing to shop around and find the brand that is right for them.
And it's interesting on the influencer side of things, because whereas our influencers used to be those parents, family members, those people who directly impacted our learning process as to what important and trustworthy looks like, we now rely on those online, who are the Instagram influencers and such like, who are pushing forward brands that are different. You need to try this, and whilst they're paid for, again, there's a lot of trust.
Again, there's an organisation called Magic Numbers that looks at a lot of the research on this. Again, a great thing to follow. Dr. Grace Kite and the Magic Numbers crew has demonstrated how so many of us will go to influencers as our first choice for advice.
Wow.
So
Even
I
though they're
think
probably paid for?
some of them are paid for, and they should technically disclose it
Yep.
for advertising standard authority rules. But a lot of influencers, and particularly the micro and the nano influencers, the really small ones, they'll just find brands that they like, that fit their lifestyle, and people buy from people who are like them. So, you know, I don't want to pick on Knight Frank because I love Knight Frank. I've got friends there still. Knight Frank is a big international brand. If I want an agent that covers this part of the world, who knows this part of the world better than anyone else, that lives in this part of the world, that walks along this towpath, is that going to be Knight Frank? Or is that going to come to Chartwell Noble? And, you know, the brand that you choose says something about yourself as well. So yes, people used to go, I've got a Knight Frank house. At some point, people are going to go, probably sooner than you think, I've got a Chartwell Noble house. And for people in that area, will mean more than a national brand.
We've even got a client who named their house, their new build house, Chartwell House, specifically because we were involved, which was very kind of them. Whether that'll stay or
Very good
not.
name. Well, you know Elaine Penhall of Lemon and Lime.
I do, yes.
So she does home staging.
Yes, she does, yeah. And a great
And
job of it, yeah.
some of the agents that use her call it, we've lemon and limed the property.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, so they've hoovered and Googled.
They've hoovered and Googled, and it's become...
Well, that's great. That's a great bit of marketing.
Very,
isn't it?
very
Yeah.
powerful. But that's
How do we
when
get it
you've
to
arrived.
Chartwell Noble, our house?
You just need to go, it's a Chartwell Noble house. It's a Chartwell Noble house, and I want it to be a Chartwell Noble house because it means something.
Okay, so that's really interesting, isn't it, in terms of where the brands themselves are important. And
Yes.
we've only got a short amount of time. I think, unfortunately, you and I could spend a great deal of time
We've
talking
got
about this
3 hours, haven't we?
I don't think there's enough battery life in the cameras to...
I don't think there's enough canal.
I don't think they've got enough energy to keep walking backwards. So what about those agents then who want to leave? Because obviously this is something that's important to us,
Yeah.
and a lot of the people that we're going to be talking or putting this in front of will want to sort of have a better understanding of this, because the world is changing.
Yeah.
Self-employed agency is a thing.
Yeah.
Whether they are partner agents, whether they are bespoke, or there's an insert name of whether it's EXP or David Linley's by Design or the Harding Greaves or us. You know, there's a lot of different brands now that are starting to enter this space for those who wish to start with premium agency and start their own brand and a premium agency. From your perspective, what's the best way for somebody who wishes to start to go about doing that? And I'm talking about the fact that they're sat in big brand here thinking they're very comfortable behind their very big brand, and they're nervous because whilst they want to go and do it on their own, well, hang on a minute, the leads come through the big brand.
Yeah.
So how do you help people get past that?
So, again, I'm not sure this is that popular a statement with some people, is self-employment isn't for everybody. And
Absolutely right.
I think taking away the monthly paycheck is a complete shock to some people. And then you start taking away what a larger brand gives you, the lead generation, all that kind of
Yes.
stuff, the credibility at the doorstep before you even speak to someone. But self-employment is absolutely the right way to go for some people. I've been self-employed since 2003, so I'm kind of long in the tooth on this one, and I struggle when I've ever gone back into temporary employment. But I think this is slightly out there, but I think the first thing you ever need to do if you're thinking about going down this route is talk to your loved ones. Because when you jump, you're going to jump with them as well. And you will save your business 28 times in the first 28 days when you're self-employed.
I like that.
But, you know, if genuinely your partner, your significant other, supports you, thinks it's the right thing to do, you've spoken about why you don't want to do what you're doing at the moment and why you'd like to go down the self-employment route that can give you enormous riches if you do it, and give you a level of freedom and lifestyle that a corporate life or an employed life wouldn't give you, and also give you massive headaches, is I would talk to all the providers, some great companies out there that are doing self-employment. Because you could go out genuinely on your own, but you've just made it twice as hard. And it's already hard. And it's already hard. And, you know, you've started a business, I've started a business, you know, and I've started several businesses, and some of them in catastrophic failures. So it's kind of like, you know, it's not a walk in the park. You won't get to £100,000 income tomorrow.
And I
It will take
suppose
a while.
and I suppose that you're absolutely right, and that's really important. And I think there's a lot of people out there. We're not going to name names because that's not the right thing to do, but it's easy for those who know to find out. There's a lot of people out there with grand promises of big riches, and you can earn six figures quickly and still take little Johnny to school. Now, doing what we do in the upper quartile, the fees are very, very big.
Yeah.
And there's something that I know Chris Watkin recently posted, sort of AI-generated pictures of an agent looking sort of £0 this month.
We never celebrate when we've had a 0 month.
Absolutely, and that is so important, isn't it? Yeah. Because we have a responsibility as brands, because we're not employers, as brands, to provide security as well as opportunity.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
100%. You may have 3 to 12 months of earning nothing, even with the best model.
Yep.
We know from an instruction to sale can take a long time, and actually receiving that money, and there's a fall through rate. So have a long runway of cash, and probably longer than you think you need. Obviously, your partner now fully supports you what you're doing. Talk to the very find the right person for you to work with.
Yes.
The model is actually genuinely give you an advantage. So it's.
And what does an advantage look like?
So some brands mean something, some brands don't. They're essentially just a sticker. You want someone who's genuinely going to basically give you the guidance, the advice, show you what works. But as a marketer, I'll dwell on the marketing bit, they know how to market their brand in a way that you as an agent can then use to market yourself.
Yeah.
So really great brand
identity.
That's
the key, isn't it? Not hiding behind the brand, not relying on the brand.
You're still self-employed.
Brand.
You're still self-employed, and for IR35 reasons, your job can't be to give them all the things that they need if they're an employee. Otherwise, they'd be an employee.
Yes.
So they still need to generate their own leads. But if you join the right model, they'll have an army of people who've already done it, or a squad of people who've already done it. You talk to the best people in that company who are doing well, and you learn from them. Interesting.
We've got a day tomorrow. We call it a training day. It's not really a training day, but we have what I refer to as the hive mind, where we get all of it. Everybody comes together and they do what went well and even better if. And sort of Stephen Brown sort of
love that.
Used to extol the virtues of going through that exercise. What went well and even better if. And that's a great way of just basically chucking everything on a whiteboard. Pain points, difficulties. Now, obviously, geographically, things are different depending on who you are and where you are. But it's just a great way of not only making sure that you don't feel alone, because very importantly, you are not. You are still part of an. If it's done properly, you're part of a network.
You should feel like you're part of something.
Yeah, but also it's the learnings. This is not a state agency. This is entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
You just the conduit or the commodity is houses and relationships that you're building with owners, rather than
exactly.
You ultimately you become your own. Well, you are self-employed, aren't you?
And there are some very tried and tested models on how you should do things. So, I talk about being relentless and consistently in what I call the 4 riders of the marketing apocalypse.
Yes.
Which is, you should start by getting out there and talking to your local newspaper. Finding the local influencers, and not necessarily the influencers, the influential people, the people who connect you to the right clubs and the right networks and the mothers groups and the Rotary Club or whatever it happens to be your network of the kind of people you want to. You need to connect them. Basically, PR.
Yes.
You need to build personal relationships.
Something that you're used to somebody else doing for you when you work for a brand.
Absolutely, and people will not understand how much of that is going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
If you work for a bigger brand. Then, email. You need to get emails. Once you've got permission to send someone an email, people love property.
Dropping in there.
Regular dropping into people. I do this is what's going on in the market. Look at what else is going on. Include your videos if you've done video in there as well. But a constant drip feed of content that makes them think of you all the time. What the Voice of the Agent showed from both last year and this year is 1/3 of people can't recall a single estate agency. Not painful, one brand. We're not front of mind for most people. And the average number is just around between 3 and 4. So you have to get into someone's awareness at that 3 and 4 level.
Well, we're only relevant to people every 7 years or so, or whatever
7
it is
to
now.
13 years. And the average time of all properties in the UK between moving is 19 years. Because some properties don't come to the market. Then you've got to do your social. Again, listening to Simon Gates, because we talked about the Voice of the Agent, is you need to be on Facebook. You need to be on Instagram.
Those
you
channels,
need to be on LinkedIn if you're going for the more affluent. You need to be on TikTok. And I said in a presentation the other week, if content is king, then video is God. You need to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
You need to do video. You know, I recommend the Simon Gates one you did. He talks about going around your area and filming people. It's like, yes, create content. And if you...
Relatable content.
Relatable content about your area. Show that you know the area better than us. Show, and Christopher Watkin talks about this, you know, video the houses on the market and say what you like about them. So people start to know you as someone who is a good corporate citizen in the world of property, but you understand the market. And then finally, after you've done your PR, your email and social, we literally know where people live.
Yes.
It's called an address. And if you want to sell a certain type of property, send a letter to every single one of those types of property in your area and keep sending them letters. Don't sell, share interesting information.
Yes.
Have a QR code, sign up to my newsletter. Get the email or follow me on social media. Here's a great video I've done. But because you literally know where, we call it a non-moving consumer good.
Okay.
If you're selling a Mars bar through a shop, if you're Mars, other chocolate bars are available. If you're selling a Mars doesn't know who bought the Mars. It's sold through someone else. They know the shop who bought the Mars, but not the individual.
Yeah.
With a house, literally know the
We know the
house.
end user, don't we? Yeah.
You know, I at some businesses I've worked with where we targeted a specific type of market, we had a database of every single house in an area that we wanted to sell. And they would be relentlessly direct marketed with interesting, good stuff.
And of course, there are tools now which enable us to do that.
Yes, but don't send junk.
That's the key, isn't it?
Send,
Because everybody else does.
and if it's a system generated, standard dear homeowner letter, you're doing your brand more harm than good. Consider what you're sending. Make it personal, coloured envelopes, handwriting, tip-on cards with business cards, beautiful imagery, really well designed. Make them feel good when they open it. The average house in the UK gets 1.4 letters a day. It's on the market, 7 from a estate agency, they're all the same. Make yours stand out. Handwritten envelopes, actual stamps, not frank marks. You can do lumpy mail as well. So now I've known people who've done keys, cutouts of houses, magazines. Send something they're going to really value getting.
They're going to feel guilty about throwing
tactile,
away.
and go like, you know, I'm a big fan of magazines. You know, people still read magazines, what we call lean back media. You sit back and you read it. People love beautiful property, so they will read it. So find a way to get a magazine into someone's house, which will last 6 months.
Yeah.
They won't bin it. If it's just junk,
Just sit on the coffee
they
table.
might as well put the bin underneath their letterbox, because that's where it's going straight away.
Yeah, waste of money and waste of
just
time.
junk mail.
Yeah, well, it's not getting any brand awareness because
No.
they haven't opened it up anyway.
No.
Interesting. Okay, good. Okay, so when we talk about how to get off the ground, how to start, that's fine. So we're talking about then that next step, how to get through the doors. We've talked about that in terms of, you know, prospecting and going after new business. And again, there's lots of tools out there. We use Spectre.
Yeah.
Because we're a part of the Street Group ecosystem, which
Yeah.
we love, and it works very well. It's very, very effective for us. And again, other solutions are out there, just to make sure I don't get my wrist slapped. So, in terms of then becoming that aspirational brand, then, and being a part of that aspirational brand, because we sit there and we do our Chartwell Noble stuff and elevate the brand, but ultimately the onus is only on us to a degree.
Yeah.
That a lot of it has to be down to the individual, doesn't it?
Yes.
So give us a couple of examples of what you've seen that is really good. You've mentioned obviously DDRE, you've mentioned others, but give us a couple of examples of what you've seen that under the new model of self-employed agents that you've gone, do you know what, that's really good, that works really, really well.
So
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, so I'm not going to name anyone.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
going to dodge
Yeah,
it by
of
not
course.
naming, because if
Yeah,
I
that's
name
fine.
someone, I'll annoy someone else.
Yeah, always
And
the way.
I've got into trouble before with this one. I said, well, why don't you name my brand?
Yeah.
Because I know. But for me, it's really obvious the ones who have got really good brand guidelines. They are absolutely consistent.
Yep.
So everything they see, you know it's coming from that brand. There's a pink one. There's a hat-based one.
Yes.
There's one that's named after a Prime Minister's old house. You know, there's those ones which are so consistent and memorable, and the brand is so clearly defined. I was speaking to one franchise, who will again remain nameless, and each of the franchises was slightly adapting the brand. And that to me is a disaster.
Yes.
Because people don't live in the catchment areas of an agent. They move around. And you've got to see consistency between them to make sure that brand is having the effect. Brand is an amplifier. All brand does is, I see that logo, I know what it means. If I see an EasyJet, if I see a Ryanair, I know what those two means, versus an Emirates. I know what they stand for. The same is true of a estate agency. Knight Frank has that in spades.
You know what you're getting, don't you?
Exactly, you know what it means. And in reality, what they're having a little bit is the delivery is slightly disappointing to what the brand stands for some of those established brands. Not to everyone, there's some amazing people within them, but a few people sort of take it for granted a bit, what that brand does. As an individual, your job is to double down on the brand. You really understand the values of the company and
leverage
you
it.
mean them and you sweat them. You talk about it all the time. I've gone into companies and said, okay, so you've got values, all right? What are the values? Most people won't know them.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
And, you know,
Because they don't see them as their values.
they're
they
not
see
their
them as
values.
the brand's values.
It's something else. You've got to make that brand you and really use that in every conversation. And you're consistent, you're relentless. And again, Simon's going to think I'm blowing smoke up his backside. You're patient.
Yes. Because he's the perfect example of that,
It
isn't
takes time.
Yeah.
Hey, it takes 30 years to have an overnight success.
Yes.
And you know, I've been building my business for 2 years, and I finally have started to reach that cruising altitude.
Yeah.
I'm just getting there. 2 years of blood, sweat, and tears. And if you do something and it doesn't work the way you want, maybe do it again. Don't abandon it just because the first time you've done it.
Yes, learn from the failure as well.
Learn from what really doesn't work, but just because it didn't work the first time doesn't mean it won't work the second time. Or even on the 7th time it might finally work. So you've got to give things time to grow. And if you just message someone for the first time, don't expect them to respond.
Yeah.
They will not notice the first time they contact you.
What's the average? Go on then, you'll know this. What's the average amount of times we've got to touch base with somebody before they pick up the phone?
So, the thing called the Ebbinghaus retention curve, we forget 95% of what we're told. You're supposed to say the same thing 28 times.
28 times.
You're supposed to say the same thing 28 times before it generally goes into your long-term memory.
Oh, I thought it was 14.
It's why school is so.
going.
It's why school is so repetitive. Now you don't need it to be embedded like basic maths, moving house, but you want your brand to be there. So 7 to 9 is good. 7 to 9 is good. 14 is where American Express says that's the peak.
Oh, good. I knew I wasn't just making it up.
14. They were masters at this stuff, and they basically said 14 is the place where you probably stop bothering, because at 14 you won't get the next group of people.
That's interesting, isn't it?
So 14 is really good, but this is what most people's marketing is like. They can't hear me, can they? When I go,
No. Morning.
morning. This is what I know you can't hear me. This is deliberate. Most people's marketing is too quiet.
Yeah.
And you think send one piece of messaging and they've done their job. And it's like, no, you need to send it 7, 9, 14, 28 times and keep going there. The Google 7-11-4 rules, 7 hours of content. What is 7 hours of content before someone will even consider you?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah.
So you can't do enough. And actually, if you're starting up self-employed, you don't have any clients. What else are you going to do with your time? Create content.
This is exactly it. And for that first 9 months or so, well, certainly the first 3 months or so, we are fully expecting people to not actually have a great deal of things to do in inverted
You're laying
commas.
the foundations.
But my goodness me, you can do an awful lot when there's not a lot to do, isn't there?
And there will come a point where you don't have the time. So now is the time to do it. It's to lay the foundations to build a great base of content. No, after you. Lay the basis of content around which you will build your business. Hello, dog.
Yeah, so it's that we pre-populate people's Facebook pages before they start. We give them something as a grounding to build their sort of content from, but it's got to rely on them. And Percy Clark in the South Cotswolds for us, he is relentless in the area profiles. He's brilliant at it, and he's building great content and a back catalogue there. And now he's got his instructions and he's able to fall back on that.
And if you're struggling with creating content, there's another method called curation. To create content, you can curate content. Take other people's content and share it. And in the whole generative AI, ChatGPT world, if you're struggling with ideas, let ChatGPT help you with ideas. It can come up with 20 video ideas in a second.
Yes.
And that can just give you prompts that you can learn. And then I'm a big fan of getting comfortable with one of those things.
Yes.
The black mirror.
Interestingly, the second time that's been mentioned on the
You've
towpath.
got to get comfortable with looking at a camera and talking because, as I say it again, content's king, video's God. So much of content consumed online is video. So unless you're producing video, you're missing out on most of the market.
Yeah.
And that's every generation.
And the opportunity to be seen as an authority.
And also people get to know you.
Yeah.
Bob Burg's
That's where trust
endless
starts,
referrals, know, like and trust. If I don't know you, I can't like you, I can't trust you. But just talking about what you care about will make you more likable and more trustworthy. There's a thing in marketing, I teach it on 30 years of marketing, called propinquity. Propinquity. It's a horrible word.
That's going to be fun on the subtitles.
It could be the name of the business, but I can't say it most of the time. And it's called the mere exposure effect. The more frequently you see something, the more familiar you become with it, the more favourable you are towards it. It's a cognitive bias. I often joke it's why we like our children. See them a lot, you can familiar, and that's why you like them. You've got no choice. That's true of brands and businesses too. You need to be seen a lot to become familiar, and unless you're a really awful human being or a really awful business, that will lead to familiarity and favourability. So you just need to get your message out there.
Get yourself out there.
Out there, lots. And however much you're doing, turn up to 11.
It's still not enough.
Still not enough. Double it, triple it, keep going until someone asks you to stop. And even then, double down.
Right, so we've done the turnaround. We're now heading back to the office. Well, I would say heading back to the office. We're actually heading to the pub next.
This is what I like. This is why I came.
Yeah, this is the even more fun.
Someone said free lunch, and I went, yes. Where do I need to be?
I'm in the car. So, okay, controversial opinion time. I told you you wouldn't have to wait very long.
That really wasn't that long, actually.
at all,
Dear me.
Exactly. So this is something I like to do on the return journey, and it's actually come up with some very interesting things. So, what is your controversial opinion about the estate agency industry that you do not share very often?
So I've shared it probably with a few people. I may even mention it on 30 Years of Marketing occasionally.
So there's over 200 people have already said
But I don't know if I do actually. I can't remember if I have, because I certainly haven't mentioned it every time. Is it always surprises me how fantastically incurious estate agents are.
Okay.
I have never worked in an industry that is so disinterested in what other people in the industry are doing, and it's almost like it's almost like a closed shop at unions. They think anyone who's not in the industry of a estate agency has nothing to offer. Now that's not a few. That's
really
a vast swathe of people in our industry. They are entirely incurious about what they could learn from outside the industry or from what their competitors are doing.
That's really interesting.
And it blows my mind, because I am Mr. Curious. If I could literally spend 4 days on Wikipedia going down all sorts of rabbit warrens.
And do we think this has got something to do with is this a changing thing, or is this something that you've gone, do you know what, it's still like it was 20 years ago, nobody's wanting to change, or are we starting to see the difference now?
I think what I found is, I've got to be careful of confirmation bias. I found my tribe of people who are curious.
You've got the 1%.
I've got the people who generally, they want to learn from non-estate agents like me. They want to learn from people outside the industry. And that would lead me to believe the industry is changing. And then I'll meet someone...
But is that because you're in that echo chamber?
Because I'm in that echo chamber. And it's my filter bubbles, finding the people, the 250, 400, 500 people who are curious and willing to learn. And then I'll meet someone who, they can't learn anything, you can't tell them anything, and quite frankly, if you're not an estate agent, you don't know anything. And you've got nothing to offer.
I saw a very entertaining exchange between yourself and Mr. Baldock the other day, which he's going to no doubt text me and sorry, Matt.
Sorry, Matt.
where he challenged you that there was a conversation taking place about the industry, but nobody on the panel was actually in the industry.
Yes. So we were doing a panel.
So is that an example of what you're talking about?
That's an example. Although he is curious. He's come to 30 years of marketing.
Matt was one of the very first people I remember sitting in a car park in a town in North Shropshire on the phone to Matt saying, I'm going to go and do this on my own. I've got a couple of people that I think are going to come with me on it. Can we have a chat about how you've done what you've done?
It's partly why
great.
It's partly why I had to react. It surprised me he said it.
Okay.
because I didn't expect it to come from him. He was an odd
Yeah, but he loves a bit
source
of
for
controversy,
that. I know he does, and actually it was great clickbait for all of us. But no, I think what I kind of surprised me was we'd interviewed 1,029 estate agents and lettings agents. That's what the voice of the agent was. So we had the views of over
quite a lot.
1,000 agents.
It's not just a few people.
Not
in
just
the
a few people in
having
a pub,
letter.
and with strong opinions, not
Yeah.
much knowledge. So I put a panel together of non-estate agents to discuss it, to look at it from the outside in. I am going to be doing a panel of estate agents at some point, but this specific event was to go, as people who work with estate agents and lettings agents, what do we think about the results? And if someone says, well, where's the estate agent's voice?
Because
there's 1,000 voices in this book.
We are your client base, so
Exactly.
it's important that you have an opinion or a thought process, because A, you've got to learn from it, and B, there's a lot that you can contribute to it as well.
Exactly, and what you'll find if we do have, an estate agent, they'll give me their very specific view of estate agency.
Come on through. Sorry. No,
That's
not at all.
okay.
Not at all.
And what I wanted was the view of 1,000 estate agents discussed by people who aren't estate agents.
I like that.
But it's writ larger than that. I've spoken to agents and they literally have zero interest in anything but the job they do and the area they operate. And
Why do you think that is?
that
Because
is...
we're quite gregarious individuals.
Yeah.
We like, personal relationships. I mean, the nature of what we do is,
Yeah.
it's not just transaction, it's personal and it's emotional. We're people in our communities. We can't do very very good job unless we are. Why do you think that is?
I think that's the answer to the life, the universe and everything. I think that is the ultimate
So you're
question.
telling me you haven't got the answer.
I don't have the answer to that. I say, what is my
42,
most
yeah.
controversial... Yeah, it is 42. Don't, spoiler alert. It is my most controversial view because I want to try and find the answer. I know it's to be true that we are incurious as industry. What I'm trying to work out is why. And it really bugs me because I am Mr. Insight, Mr. Research, Mr. Data, and I want to try and find this answer. But the people
We're going to have a very interesting lunch. I'm just glad there's
And
no
it-
cameras there for that. 'cause it
What's
should be very
really
interesting.
difficult is the people who I want to get the answers from are the ones who won't engage.
Yeah, that's so spot on. And
I am not an estate agent, so they won't talk to me. And it's like, I can't talk to the people who can give me the answer.
it's extraordinary because David Lindley and I had this exact conversation about the echo chamber.
Yeah.
Where, he asked me, he wouldn't give a controversial opinion because he told me I blindsided him. But he got
David,
over,
you
he
coward.
got over it quickly. but he then said, well, what's yours? And mine was about the echo chamber, that we're trying to do all these sorts of podcasts that we do. It's not just for self-promotion, it's actually because there's some real knowledge, and we're doing this because how many people get to listen to the man that is Simon Leadbetter, talk about the things he's talking about, and some of it's really engaging content, and it's important to share that. But there's 1%, and I was running the numbers. If you sit there and look at the number of people who go to conferences throughout the year, and then you divide that by the number of people that are in a estate agency, it's not very many people. As a percentage, it's not very many. You may see a massively packed room, and the people who run these conferences sit there and rub their hands together and go, that was a success. But the long and the short of it is, we are not talking to people who haven't already heard what we've heard. So how do we penetrate that is the key, isn't it?
And that's part of doing the voice of the agent, to be honest with you, is I knew that more people who are not in this 1% filter bubble would be willing to fill in a survey.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. I still know, I was talking to Heather from Spectre about this, from Street about this, and Heather staff, in that it's still probably representative of a more engaged population than the whole, and we're going to have to try and break through that at some point. But it's still really rich insight. But by doing an anonymous survey, you didn't need to stick your head above the parrot. You could just share your views.
Yes.
And I've got lots of really random people who are obviously in the industry who you'd never hear of. They're not in any publications, not any podcasts, but they generally have a view.
Do you think that they were glad to have the opportunity to do it?
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were because, we're a very, very good industry at an older generation telling the younger generation what to do. I'll show you what to do, young man.
Yes.
And the next generation who are digital natives, they really understand video, they understand social media, they understand all the stuff that I bang on about till I'm blue in the face. But they really understand it, and we could learn from them. But again, it is a bugbear of mine. The voice of the agent is part of my answer in terms of work out what the industry's really thinking. But there's something in the mindset of the majority that they're just not interested in engaging with either the rest of the industry or absolutely anyone outside the industry.
It's fascinating.
And while we're doing this and we're sharing all this information, you've done it with loads of people, and the other podcasts out there like Simon Gates and David Linley, they're sharing content all the time.
Is it arrogance, or is it because we don't think people understand?
I think it's a fiercely competitive market.
We don't want to give our way.
No, we are absolutely. The top 2 brands in the UK, they've got 2.4% market share. So there's no real dominant player, and that's brands, not companies. There's no real dominant brands apart from when you move to locality. So the average independent in every postcode district in the UK, the average market share according to 2088 from work they did for me is 37%, the top 2 brands.
Wow.
So locally, 2 brands will dominate.
Yes.
They're fiercely at war with each other,
Not looking at
and they
else.
don't want to lose the top 2 positions.
And so they're so focused on each other that they're
Yes.
not focusing on what they should be doing.
Yes.
It's interesting, isn't it?
And what they're not focused on is sharing. They're not focused on sharing, and they're not focused necessarily on learning anything from outside the industry.
So I suppose this takes us back to the prime cuts then, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
there was some reference to that in there. What is there in terms of your key takeaways from the prime cuts from the Voice of the Agent survey then, that for the upper quartile that specifically took you by surprise or you thought was worthy of note in reference to what we're talking about now?
So there's 2 groups that come out of the Voice Agent, which I think, and what's really strange about them, not strange, it's kind of, it's good to know, is how close agents who are growing and prime agents are doing. Both of them, both sets, whether a prime agent or they're a growth agent in the rest of the market, they're doing more marketing.
Okay.
They're adopting new channels more readily, but they're using a combination of old media and new media more. They've not just drifted completely to new media. I was having an argument with someone who runs businesses. I don't know why people keep sending direct mail through the letterbox. It's like, well, apart from that, you literally know where they live, and it's one of the most impactful things you could do. Apart from those 2
in front of
facts,
those people, yeah.
and there's actually a little bit of friction in there sending direct mail that you don't get with social media, which means you need to actually really work it to make it work. So what was really interesting for me is, and hey, am I glad it's this result? Yes, I am. The best agents who are growing regardless of sector and the prime agents are just doing more marketing. They're more active on more channels, more frequently and more consistently. And if you carve
consistency is the word.
Consistency is marketing. If you, Simon Gates, I think, even said that. We parrot each other a lot. If you take the growth agents out of the prime space, so just look at them, I'm less sure about it because the sample sizes get a bit flaky. It's a fraction of a small market. But again, you see the growth agents, then they're on steroids. If growth agents of the whole market are doing more marketing on more channels, the growth agents of prime agents are literally off the charts.
Wow.
They're doing stuff like this,
Yeah.
but they're doing direct mail still. They're great brochure.
They're still relying on the traditional, not newspapers necessarily, but they're relying.
But
on
they will
traditional.
engage with newspapers through PR. So they'll have relationships with local newspapers and things like that. But, the number of people who watch local newspaper websites is massive, millions. Now, I was talking to a team down in Kent. I think Kent Online, or whatever it's called, their website.
Right.
7 million visits a month.
Goodness me.
That's a local newspaper.
Goodness
They've just
me.
moved
That's a lot.
traffic online.
Yeah.
So you're just more active on more channels more frequently. And I feel like I have to keep saying it to people because it should be harder, and it's
28
not.
times, apparently.
28 times. I'm probably up to about 280 now, and it's just starting to get through to a few people.
Yeah.
But yeah, guess what? If more people know about you, they're more likely to choose you. Who knew?
Who knew? Well, what a brilliant way to end. Well done. That's a great, nice summary. Did you do that deliberately? You've been rehearsing that all the way here.
It just came to me.
No, well done, Simon. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your insights. It's just a minefield. And honestly, I cannot recommend highly enough Simon's one-day course. It is absolute gold on every single level, and a true investment that you will definitely get heaps of value from. So, Simon, thank you.
Thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate
Good
it.
to
Should we go and grab some lunch?
Let's have that lunch.
Good stuff.
Cheers.